So good morning, everyone. I'm Teresa Bateman, the first regional director in the greater San Francisco Bay Area. Excited to continue our journey with you in our 2021 First California Workshop Series, Product Development and Design Thinking. So here's a map of our journey together to learn about product development and apply design thinking principles. We kicked off the program last week with strategy and navigation, but if you're here just joining us for the first time today, welcome. So as we have some newcomers, I will briefly recap last week and provide more big picture views. Next, we welcome Raytheon Technologies to share an overview of ideation technique with an exercise focusing on diversity and inclusion of customers. Then we look forward to learning about design thinking principles from our friends at Stanford. And finally, I'll provide a brief wrap up and summary for you to prepare you for session 2. And if you have any questions along the way, please pop them into the chat. We will respond during the session. And if we have additional time at the end, we'll open it up for some Q&A. So let's get moving. All right, so for the folks that joined us last week, thank you for sharing the fun on social media. And also thank you for sharing your gracious feedback, in which you requested that we spend additional time giving an overview of the background and the need for design thinking. So from a high level view, design thinking helps us understand the people we are designing for. It's a creative solution-based approach to solving problems. And it's not only a way of thinking or working, it's a collection of hands-on methods. And putting that all together, it's an iterative process where we seek to understand our user, challenge assumptions, and redefine problems to identify alternate strategies. This methodology was developed nearly 20 years ago from the Institute of Design at Stanford University, also known as D.school. There are many variants of the design thinking, but most common is the 5-mode model we see here, where you empathize with your users, define your user needs, their problems, and your insights, ideate by challenging assumptions, creating ideas for innovative solutions, prototype to start creating these solutions, and test to gain user feedback. And once again, this is an iterative process where you revisit modes based on user feedback throughout. So personally, I think the best way to understand design thinking is through an example. So let's listen to a story from an industrial engineer.
I'd start with this, which is kind of a little bit of the thread or the kind of the heartbeat of my story today. And you've heard a lot about the design thinking and the design process that a lot of these folks have gone through, very powerful tools. And I just want to emphasize that empathy at the beginning for me is something that I think is really what is the heartbeat of the project when you move forward. And a lot of times when you move forward into the iteration and prototyping and some of the design phases that you go through, you need to actually refocus back and see what the empathy was that actually got you started at the beginning. So I had just finished designing this big MR scanner, and I was very proud. I think I had worked on this thing for probably about 2 years. And I'm an industrial designer, and I was doing the enclosures and controls and displays and the coils and patient transfer, that kind of stuff. And I was so excited to see this the first product that we installed. So I went to see it in its actual environment in the hospital. So I was just running through this hospital to check out my new product that I had just finished. I'm really excited. And I kind of almost like barged in, took my wallet and all the metal stuff out of my pockets, and ran in and was, with my baby, and I was just a proud papa, basically. And I remember the technologist coming in and saying, we have a patient that's going to be coming through. So could you step out for a little bit? I said, sure, no problem. I'll come back in. We can talk later. And I remember walking out and I was standing in the hallway. And this is kind of what I saw down the hallway. I saw this young family coming down the hallway. And I'm just standing in the hallway. And they're coming toward, and I can tell as they get closer, the little girl is weeping. And as they even get closer to me, I notice the father just leans down and just goes, remember, we've talked about this. You can be brave. And they turn to walk into the MR suite, and I kind of follow them in. And I still remember it like it was today, guys. I'm standing behind the little girl. She's probably about 7. And I'm looking into this environment that I was just standing in. I was just in there in this environment, just, doing my happy dance, right? And she just freezes. And I, looking at her angle and just seeing in that same environment where I was just standing, I realized that this is something totally different. On the wall is that, horrible warning sticker, it's got the magnet and the big exclamation point. It's got that yellow and black tape, like on the thing, like, almost like a accident scene. Everything looks really kind of like beige. It's got this kind of weird colored flooring and, just kind of everything's bleached out. And then the room itself is kind of dark and it kind of has those flickering fluorescent lights. And the machine itself that I designed basically looked like a brick with a hole in it.
So this is a long TED Talk that I encourage you to watch later, but I'd like to jump and show you what this engineer created using design thinking. Let's start off with the typical MRI scanner. I can very much relate to this story as my 2-year-old daughter had an MRI, and I vividly recall being asked if she needed sedation. So so somehow she and I got through this, and it would have been a lot easier if it was designed with the user in mind, like a child, such as this. Now, what child or even adult would not want to go into outer space on this MR scanner? Or this one. How about taking a journey across the ocean on this ship? These images show the power of design thinking, which focuses on empathy of the user and keeps user at the heart of the design. Now, here's another example some of you students may relate to as a video controller. This is well designed to fit into your hands with button placements optimized for your fingers. Well, what if you didn't have standard size hands or not all of your fingers, or perhaps had dexterity challenges? The image on the right has external devices such as switches, buttons, joysticks to create a custom controller experience. This unique controller was developed with the user in mind using design thinking methodology. So I hope this gives you a good background and understanding on why design thinking is at the core of our first California workshop series. So therefore, let's continue onward and recap our session 1. We learned about the empathy mode. That is the foundation of human-centered design, where you must observe your users and their behavior in the context of their lives, engage by interviewing users, and immerse by experiencing what your user experiences. We also discussed insightful interview questions using the what, how, why, such as what is a user doing, how is the user doing it, and why are they doing it that way? In the design mode, we must translate empathy findings into compelling needs and scope a specific challenge. In this mode, you must focus by narrowing down things, understand your users and their needs, and develop an actionable problem statement from your user's point of view. Additionally, we did an overview of the innovation challenge criteria and intellectual property, noting that provisional patents, which we hope that you all have an opportunity to consider, has a 1-year timeline from public disclosure. And finally, your team's homework was to use interview techniques to develop your problem statement. So now that everyone is up to date on session 1, let's move along and welcome Raytheon after this inspiring video.
What if we just made spacesuits and outfitted almost every astronaut since Freedom 7? That'd be a big deal. What if we just invented modern aviation and made the most advanced engines in history? What if we just created missile defense and guidance systems used to protect the freedoms we hold dear? If we just did any one of those things, it'd be pretty special. But when the companies responsible for it all bring together bold leadership, we accomplish even more. Like building eco-aviation solutions, developing contactless airport technology, and creating real-time satellite imaging to enable instantaneous identification of assets on the ground. Nearly 200,000 employees working together to create safer, more connected flight, intelligent space systems, and smarter defense. And of course, we still make spacesuits. Raytheon Technologies, the future of aerospace and defense.
So after watching this inspiring video, I imagine you're excited to learn the techniques used to ideate on those innovations. So please join me in welcoming Raytheon Technologies.
All right, terrific. All right, so hello everyone. I'd like to go and first thank Teresa for having us here today and for all of you for taking the time to hear about innovation and ideation from us. I am James Cooper. I will be the presenter today, but I'd like to make sure that without Fazlul's review, and he'll introduce himself in a moment, but without his review and input, the materials would not be complete. And without Teresa's help, it was all going to look a lot plainer and much less effective at conveying the information. So by way of introduction, I am a senior innovation advocate at Raytheon Technologies, which means that my whole job is about helping some of the top scientists and engineers come up with and explore new ideas in the aerospace and defense industry. And now, Fazlul, if you'll briefly introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fazlul. Everyone calls me Fuzz. I'm one of the department managers for the Systems Engineering Center at Raytheon Technologies. I've been with FIRST for about 10 years, and I'm really excited about this series and the fact that we're doing innovation challenges at the FIRST robotics competition level.
All right, cool. Thank you. So what we're going to start off here is talking about the intersection of ideas. So what we like to say within our group here at Raytheon Technologies is innovation occurs at the intersection of needs and ideas. So it's to say that you can have a really, really cool idea, but if there's no actual application for it, there's no need for it, then it's just a cool idea and it's not of much real value to anyone, at least not at this time. So if you have a need, and of course we have terms like necessity as a mother of invention, or there's a book down there. So Teresa kind of helped to highlight and put a lot of the book titles down there. So if you want to follow up on any of these resources, these are a lot of the resources that we draw our knowledge and expertise from. But the Medici effect talks exactly about that, where you have a need, you are a need knower, somebody you know has a need, and you come up with an idea that meets that need. Boom, that's where this big bang explosion happens. That's where the real value in that innovation arises. So where do these needs come from then? That's the next big question. There are two main tracks that we look at. There's open innovation and targeted innovation. Open innovation says that you, as the innovator, as the ideator, you are coming up with a need. It's originator driven. So you, from your own life or something that you've observed or something that you've been told, you come up with this need. You've identified this need, and now you start saying that this, I'm going to come up with a solution to this. But that need is core to your problem statement, whatever it is that you're trying to solve there. Targeted innovation, on the other hand, is exactly what we're talking about, this today and these series of talks. It's the innovation challenge. So this is to say that somebody else, whether it's your teacher, your company, your school, whatever it is, somebody else has come up with a series of topic areas or questions that need answers, need solutions, and they've put it forward to you to then come up with these ideas or come up with the answers, the solutions to these challenge spaces. So the other way that we look at that need, we also use the term the job. And I know a lot of you don't want to think about doing the job, but this is not your job. This is actually the job of your idea. What job is your idea going to do? So again, I mentioned about necessity as a mother of invention. A lot of people say it was Plato, but apparently it actually existed before him. It's just kind of attributed to him. So don't believe everything you see on memes on the internet. But there's also the theory of jobs to be done by a well-respected Harvard business school professor, Clayton Christensen. He passed away very recently, but he wrote a few books that deal with you have a need, this job, right? And you have this idea that you come up with, and how well does that idea actually do perform the job that needs to be done? And so it's kind of an interesting way to look at it, where you're actually just not saying that it's just this cool idea, but it's actually an idea that does an actual job. It's an interesting way. It's great, a great series of books, Dilemma and the Innovative Solution there, and it really it's an interesting perspective on what these things might mean. So, what's your job? And of course, by your job, again, I'm talking about your ideas job. There are a couple of things that are really important, I'll right offhand. As I said, the first thing is identifying that need. What is that need that your idea, this cool idea you come up with, what is that need that your idea is actually going to meet, that is, it's going to answer? And the second thing, though, is actually understanding your customer. And frankly, this is something that works well in line with what Teresa was recapping earlier about design thinking, an empathy-based approach where you're putting yourself in your customer's shoes, drawing upon your own insights and experience to help you ideate with the user in mind and meet their needs. So you need to understand the customer. And a big part of what exists out there, what we do, is called the Heilmeier Catechism. And Heilmeier, as you see down there, so there's the DARPA logo. DARPA is a Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. This is a group of the Department of Defense that looks at some of the coolest, most cutting edge, most out there, and frankly risky ideas of the Department of Defense, of all the different armed forces. And they're kind of really blazing the path on what's going to be next for our different armed forces and the warfighter out there. So Heilmeier was a DARPA director back in the 70s, and he came up with something that came to be known as the Heilmeier Catechism. These are a series of questions that he invented back in the 70s. They're still well in use today at DARPA and all around the place, including Raytheon. These are a series of questions that you should then, after you come up with the idea and you've identified the need and you've identified the customer, these are a series of questions that you should ask yourself about your idea to make sure you really thought it through and you really understand it and you're really bringing something new and different and valuable to the table. So, frankly, what are you trying to do should be fairly easy. You understand your need, you have that there. How is it done today? So this is kind of an interesting one, because regarding how is it done today, you, as a person coming with an idea, should definitely do some of the research legwork on your own, because not only will this help you refine your skills for doing this kind of digging and help build up your knowledge of the domain, but there's also a lot of value, a huge amount of value in leveraging subject matter experts as they're available to you. So there was an experiment we ran a number of years ago where we had all these top experts in whatever problem space domain it was. And we said, man, they're just really not coming up with any really big new ideas. They keep improving upon the existing technologies, but they're not coming up with any really big new ideas. So let's say that maybe they're too close to the problem space. They know it's out there, and because they know the existing solutions so intimately, they just can't think outside the box and come up with totally new solutions, right? So we get a brand new group of people who are all capable scientists and engineers, but they aren't really familiar with the problem space. And they say, okay, here's the problem, here are the constraints, now go. As it turns out, they came up with a ton of ideas, and some of them were pretty good, but every single one of them had already existed or been explored. So without the voice of knowledge and experience, their energies actually just went right into reinventing the wheel, and not even a new and improved wheel. So where we ultimately ended up was saying that pairing these creative problem solvers with subject matter experts, now they were then much better able to come up with new ideas or shape their ideas to emphasize and develop more novel aspects over what was already out there. And yeah, and all the questions are worth going through. I had the link earlier, and I understand you'll get a copy of these slides. You'll look through the questions. They're all actually really very helpful. So this is kind of the big one here that we really want to emphasize, and we'll lead into the breakout session shortly after this, but diversity and inclusion. So there are a lot of, if you just go into Google and you type in diversity and inclusion and innovation or ideation, you'll find that there are a lot of big studies that went out there that show that diversity is actually a key driver of innovation. And the fundamental reason here is that Homogeneous environments. So that's to say that everything is the same. So if you have people that are all the same, they come from the same background, have the same experiences, have the same education and training, they're probably going to keep producing the same results. Nobody's going to be that outside the box thinker who's going to bring in all these new perspectives. So what you really need to do is, instead of a homogeneous environment where everything is the same, you need a heterogeneous environment to say that there is some diversity in there. And furthermore, you need that inclusion to make sure that all voices are encouraged and heard, so that those ideas aren't just lost in the noise. You know, they don't fall beneath the noise floor. They all need to be heard. So this could be diverse backgrounds, perspectives, needs. We'll go into the exercise soon, and with some of the things you'll see in there, we're talking about gender, identity, neurodiversity, even geographical location. And so all these things contribute to much better, stronger, newer ideas. So we're going to be stepping into that. The challenge space that we're presenting to you is talking about a problem that probably is really familiar to all of you as students, and to all of us who've grown up and been through this experience as well. Backpacks have always been way overloaded, way too heavy, way too full of stuff. You know, I've had backpacks that actually literally fell apart on me because they just had so much stuff on them. So how are we going to help students to manage these unwieldy backpacks? And we're going to have you look at some of the base considerations and then kind of widen the aperture from there. So this is a collaborative breakout session. You're going to be breaking out to the rooms. All these facilitators, these wonderful people here are going to help lead this talk here. They are not recorded. The main session has been recorded, as was mentioned earlier. These breakout sessions are not recorded. Please, you know, I encourage you strongly. Again, diversity, inclusion are key to this. So I encourage you to be to show up, to speak, to contribute, and then afterwards, you know, join us back in the main room to share and learn more. So now, facilitators, if you will.
Okay, hold on, everyone. We're going to transport automatically. And can you share your experiences in the breakouts, please?
Yeah, of course. One of the ideas that I found was really insightful was an idea to have adjustable straps on a backpack. So like something where you can detach the straps from the shoulders and maybe have one on the shoulder and one on the waist, seeing as someone might not have both arms due to an accident or something like that. And that idea stemmed from the attribute of, you know, physical ability and that.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's basically it.
Yeah, and next student two, if you can share your idea.
Yeah, so my group had a very similar idea in terms of adjusting like how the weight is distributed onto a student, and also in terms of how school is structured, like how long passing periods are, or whether or not books, like there's books at school and then there's books at home, so they don't have to transport them between two different locations.
And Teresa, just to confirm, I'm moving forward with the slides at this point, right?
Please. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So thank you all very much for participating. I hope it was a good exercise for all of you. I'd be very interested in following up and finding out a little bit more about some of the ideas. But so we're going to move forward now to the ways that we innovate in terms of what we call diverge and converge. And there are a lot of different terminology that kind of means same or similar things here, but the terms that we use here are diverge and converge. The first step is to say you're expanding ideas. You're doing the next part. Something is happening here, but I'm going to ignore that. Doing the next part, we are actually narrowing down and selecting these candidate solutions. That's a distinct separate step. You want to do these differently. You don't want to do them at the same time or one after the other, rinse and repeat. They are two distinct separate things for you to do. First diverge, and then eventually you get to converging. One of the other resources is something called storming and norming. That was part of the series of papers and studies done by Bruce Tuckman. It's just a couple of steps into these series, but basically what we're looking at here is saying divergence, divergent thinking. You're widening the aperture. You want to maximize the number of ideas in that big pool of ideas. You don't want to just try and narrow down solutions right away. You want to just take everything in the kitchen sink and throw it out there in the solution space. And risk is not a bad thing. Risk is actually a good thing. You take ideas that are out there, that'll help you come up with solutions that people haven't thought about before, that might actually answer some needs that people are struggling with. Whatever it is, risk at this stage, at this point in time, is not a bad thing. And therefore, you need to give all ideas a chance. Whether you're the person delivering the idea, you're the person, running the session, being a facilitator, whatever it is, you need to give all ideas a chance. So points to consider about the ideas that are being put forward: clarity, novelty, customer value, and the key concepts. Clarity means that the idea needs to be clear, not just to say that the person you're telling it to can understand, but that to make sure that you yourself actually understand your own idea. So walk through it, explain it, make sure that's something that you well understand, that you can clearly explain to other people and help them understand what you're trying to what you're trying to pitch here. Novelty, what is new about it? Is it something where you're taking an existing technology and improving upon it, or extending its capabilities, or putting into a whole new application space? Or is it something just like really wild and revolutionary or new out there? It's good to understand the novelty of your idea. Customer value, we already talked about that. Make sure it's something that actually meets your customer's needs or does the job. And key concept, sometimes we call that the golden nugget, but this is, what is that key enabler of your idea that realizing this little nugget, and there could be more than one, but oftentimes it could be narrowed down to one or two. But what is this key thing at the very heart of your idea that needs to be realized or invented to make everything else just happen? So some of these tools that we have for divergence that we use at Raytheon, this is just really a subset. There are a bounty of tools out there, tools and techniques out there. But sharing, mind writing, round robins, reversing assumptions, and working backwards. So sharing, ideas love to be shared. There's this misconception that, oh, I came up with this idea, this is my baby, I don't want to share this with anyone else and risk losing it or have somebody else diluting it or whatever it is. And by doing that, a lot of ideas never actually see the light of day. You criticize it too much. We are our own worst critics, or you just shoot it down, or you look out there and say, there's already similar ideas out there. It's just not worth pursuing, or there's no market for this thing. So don't just hold your ideas. Find somebody that you trust and that and you respect their knowledge and expertise. It could be your family members, it could be your friends, it could be your teachers and mentors, your coworkers, whatever it is. But find these people, and you can either just informally chat with them about the idea, sit down for lunch and chat with them about it, or you can even hold briefings about it and get some feedback that way. And frequent feedback. This should not just be a one-time, one-off kind of thing. Doing this over and over, iterating upon it, building up your ideas and getting feedback on the new ways that you're pitching it, that is also hugely valuable, and especially helps you understand where the strengths of your ideas are, what makes it bigger, better, badder, whatever it is, and where might it have some deficiency that you need to address or consider. Mind writing is kind of an interesting thing here. Basically, you start with the seed. So we talked about, the backpacks are too heavy, they're too full. It starts with that seed. You can either work by yourself or the group, but just start writing down ideas. Don't filter yourself. Don't stop. Don't go back and edit anything. Just start writing. Fill up, a big page full of things, a notebook or whatever it is. Just start filling up all this paper with all these ideas. And then afterwards, you can kind of go through and start looking at associations or common themes or whatever it is. But the key part of it is either by yourself or with a group. Just start with that seed, start writing everything down. Round robins. So this is one where it really benefits if you know the people that you're working with. So this is a group exercise. You know the people that you're working with. You know what their backgrounds are, where their knowledge spaces lie, where they're experts, right? And you group them by that level of expertise. So it could be that they're part of a novelty group. They're really good at inventing things and researching that and following it up. Maybe they've found a whole lot of IP, so they're really good at figuring out what's novel. Utility, what is the use of this thing? What function does, or what function does it fulfill? And feasibility, how realistic, so maybe these are a lot of the scientists and engineers in the group. How realistic is it that we're actually going to be able to realize this, maybe within cost or other constraints? So you group them into that, and each group evaluates the idea from their perspectives and gives you feedback in that, is focused specifically in that arena. So a couple of these techniques, including this one right here, reversing assumptions, might seem a little bit weird because here we're saying that you came up with a reason why your idea is not going to work. And then we're telling you to just ignore that. Not exactly ignore it, but instead you're saying, okay, let's say you're pitching a whole new kind of traffic light. And somebody tells you, okay, well, obviously you need to have a red, yellow, and a green light. But what if it wasn't a constraint? What if instead you open up to all these other colors and maybe you can come up with a color scheme that then works better for people with or without different kinds of color blindness? Or maybe you can take a black light like at amusement parks or Halloween scare houses or whatever, right? And you incorporate those into the design. And then maybe you can paint the crosswalk lanes, include some, maybe it's retroreflective paint. And when it's safe to walk, you can illuminate those lanes. It's easier for both pedestrians and drivers to see that it's crosswalk time. And when time's running out, maybe you can add some modulation and the line kind of flashes. And of course, you have to consider about make sure it's not a strobe effect, but you get the idea, right? And working backwards. So here's another one where it seems a little strange at first. I'm asking you to just imagine that the desired end state simply exists, right? The end product, the end state, it just simply exists now. Boom, magic, shazam. Now you're taking it backwards step by step to figure out how you got to this ideal end state from there to now, to where you are right now. So how did you get to this ideal alternate reality? It's kind of like those memes where it says, step 1, do X, step 2, do Y, step 3, question marks, step 4, profit. You made it up to step 3, and now you just can't figure out what goes in there. So instead you jump to step 4 and you say, okay, what needs to exist or be true in order for step 4 to have also been true? So, all right, so let's say you want a dinosaur theme park because there's absolutely nothing wrong with a dinosaur theme park. So first you need a dinosaur for your theme park and you're having trouble cloning one of those little cuties. So let's say that, again, shazam, you have yourself a dinosaur. Well, how did it get there? It had to have come from a dinosaur egg. And how do we grow the egg? Well, you need an incubator that was suitable for the dinosaur egg. And where'd that egg come from? Maybe we use a genetically compatible surrogate to grow it. Now, how do we find such a compatible surrogate? Maybe we need recombinant DNA technology to genetically engineer a surrogate from an ostrich, and on and on and on until we are where we are today. So now doing this, it might get you to connect the dots right back to where you were stuck, or it might even lead you down a whole new pathway, or admittedly, it might just lead to another dead end, but you will have gained new insights, which might also still help you solve the problem later on. And if you do, then hey, Dinosaur Park. And there are absolutely no books or movies out there that ever show that that would be a bad idea. And the last thing I want to say here before is to stay informed. So read magazines, newsletters, blogs, watch videos. Just stay in the loop on what's going on in areas of interest and science and technology in general, because not only will that help you be better informed, but this will help you come up with new ideas and help others with their ideas. And that's where I'm going to end it for today.
So thank you, James. Thank you, Fuzz, as well, and sharing how you ideate at Raytheon Technologies to make absolutely amazing products and things that make our world, and I should say that we could see our world better from space. So thank you so much. We appreciate that. And if we do have some additional time at the end, we'll do some more live Q&A. And in the meantime, we want to invite our friends from Stanford to share their screen and share their experience and with design thinking. So I welcome the Stanford crew led by Amelia and Avdesh.
Hi, good day, everyone. Good day, morning, whatever it is for you guys. Sorry, different time zone. It's great to see you all. I hope everyone is as excited to be here as I am. I'm Ideation. I'll introduce myself properly in just a bit. I am a CS undergrad student from Trinidad and Tobago, and I am absolutely excited to be here. I'll throw it over to Amelia to introduce herself.
Great. Hi, I'm Amelia. I'm a master's student in mechanical engineering at Stanford, and I'm originally from Peachtree City, Georgia, which you probably don't know, but if you do, you would know as the city of golf carts because we have 90 miles of golf cart path.
Great. So we've talked a lot about design thinking, and today's focus is the ideation process. Now, I'm not sure how much I can teach you guys after that amazing presentation James gave you, but I'll do my best, right? So ideation is a process of going wide in every sense of it, in terms of concepts and outcomes, right? It's a model of flare, don't focus. Now that's really important. Flare, you want to just explore as wide a solution space as possible. And all ideas are worthy, no matter how bad you think it may be. As a lot of people usually say before an idea, this might not be realistic, this might not be feasible, but never say that, because I can guarantee you a lot of the great ideas and innovations we enjoy today would seem very unrealistic to someone 10 or even 5 years ago. Like smartwatches, that was a thing of science fiction just maybe 15 years ago. And now it's absolutely mundane technology to us. So all ideas are worthy, and you have to really cut out what in this case is a bad behavior, like evaluating during idea generation. Never start an idea and be like, never mind, that's probably not good. Every idea is good. Always get that idea out there, get it down on the page. It might inspire another idea, it might inspire you, someone else, someone on your team. Every idea is worth writing down. Yeah. Great.
Sorry, this is Teresa. I apologize. I know we're going to transition off into another topic real quickly, but Amelia, can I ask you to just reshare your screen? There's some interesting things going on in the PowerPoint. We really want to be able to see the Post-it notes you have virtually there.
Okay, is this up now?
Give it a minute. So it looks like you have a box on the right side of your screen. If you could close that out.
That's where all of you guys are. Sorry.
Yeah. I think if you could minimize the chat, at least on the right-hand side of the participant list, that would.
Sorry, my computer is just like flashing in and out black. Having a great time.
Teresa, can we run these? Can you run the slides?
I can.
Hopefully someone at Zoom is ideating on that problem right now.
Nice one.
Great minds think alike.
All right, I'll share the screen. All right, I'm sharing my screen. Can you all see?
Yep.
Can you go full screen or?
Yes, I will.
All right, great. So ideation serves mainly to transition from identifying a problem to exploring the solutions to those problems, right? And some of those functions are to harness the collective perspectives and strengths of your team, right? This is the stage in which everyone gets their ideas out and you combine, mix, separate, do whatever you can with those ideas. And furthermore, this allows you to step beyond the obvious solutions and drive innovation. No one ever became a great innovator by doing exactly what was happening already. It's always the outside of the box idea that's the next great discovery, right? So it helps you uncover unexpected areas of exploration, and it creates fluency and flexibility in your innovation options. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what we call a stoke activity, right? So stoke activities help you to loosen up and energize teams. It gets the brain batteries running, right? Both mentally and physically. Use stoke activities to wake up in the morning, launch a meeting, or begin a brainstorm. They should be brief and highly active. And we're going to give you a quick overview of some of these. So this is how to stoke. So that you'll see 3 post-it notes on the screen with some activities. So I'll explain these to you guys. So the first one is called category out, right? So to do this, you're lining folks up, well, the members of your team, and you name a category, anything, breakfast cereals, vegetables, cars, and point at people in rapid succession and skipping around the group. The player pointed at must name something in the category. If they don't, everyone yells out, and they're out for the rest of the round in a very dramatic fashion. Just out, just get them out of here. Yeah. So, and that's the first one. And the second one is soundball, right? Now, soundball is a very, very wacky game. You stand in a circle and throw an imaginary ball to each other, maybe even a real ball if you'd like. And every time you throw the ball, you make a sound. And whoever catches the ball has to make the exact same sound as they throw it to the next person, in addition to adding in their own new noise, right? And if you want to up the intensity, you can even get a second imaginary ball in there, make things extra confusing for everyone. But yeah, the point of these are to get everyone energized and help them get the ideas flowing. And the next idea is actually my favorite. It's used a lot in acting and improv. It's called Yes, Let's, right? And the whole point is you don't say no to anything. Everyone walks around the room randomly, one person voices an instruction like, let's act like we're at a cocktail party, or let's act like there's no gravity. I mean, we've been doing this since we're kids. Someone just says, let's act like the floor is lava, and everyone goes crazy. So yeah, it's a very fun game. And every time someone shouts out this instruction, you just shout back, yes, let's. And at any time, someone can yell the next instruction, and the answer should always be, yes, let's. So the next thing we're going to move on to is the most important part of this process. It's called how might we questions, right? So how might we questions are short questions that really launch ideation. They're broad enough to include a wide range of solutions, but narrow enough to impose helpful boundaries. Between the too narrow, how might we create an ice cream cone that doesn't drip? Or on the top broad, how might we redesign desserts? Now, personally, I don't see the need for that. I love desserts as they are. But if you guys want to redesign that, go ahead. You might maybe even make it better. So, and then you can even get go down a completely different branch. How might we redesign ice cream to be more portable? Maybe you can even tie that together to an ice cream cone that doesn't drip, right? So it's about really questioning what you can change and how you're going to do it, right? So you start with your design challenge and point of view statement, and then you break it down, the larger challenge, into smaller actionable bits and ask questions that open up the solution space, which are these how might we questions. So to do that, we're going to demonstrate with this activity here. Amelia and I are going to give you guys a brief example of how one of these how might we sessions might look like and play out.
Okay, great. So the problem that we're kind of trying to look at is we have this mother who is completely overwhelmed because she's brought her children to the airport and her flight has been delayed. So now she has to figure out a way to entertain her children during this waiting process. And so I might think about this problem, and I'm going to start this conversation with Avadesh by like proposing a how might we question. So I'm going to say, how might we entertain these kids?
And then I might try to build on that. I might say, how might we entertain the children without disturbing the other passengers? Children tend to be, loud when they're playing. So how might we entertain them without disturbing other passengers?
Cool. So then I'm hearing from Avidesh that like the loudness of these children might be a problem for other people. So I'm thinking that maybe we can pivot to how might we create a quiet activity for these children?
And then in hearing that, we can continue with that idea, or we can even pivot into another idea, like how might we separate the kids from the other passengers? You know, we can probably create some kind of off space. So how might we separate the kids from other passengers?
And now that I'm starting to think about the other passengers, I'm kind of wondering, really, why do the children have to be a burden on these passengers? Like, is there any way that we could even use the kids to entertain fellow passengers? So I would say, how might we separate the kids, or how might we use these kids' energy to help entertain the other passengers that are waiting?
And then I might say, you know what, why not let's just get to the root of this problem and arguably the root of all problems. How might we get rid of the wait time at airports in general? Who even likes waiting at the airport? Right, so now I'd really love to hear from you guys what how might we questions you guys might come up with for this situation. So please, in the chat, I want everyone to share an idea. I mean, give us your best how might we questions, build on what we said, give us your own how might we's, but it should be a question, not an idea. You're just asking the question, how might we do this?
We have a lemonade stands.
Cool, I see some how might we questions. How might we develop faster transportation, so eliminating the airport altogether? How might we find activity that both children and adults will enjoy? That's a great one that considers both sides of the perspectives in the situation. How might we implement a new idea cheaply as possible? Great, yeah, these are great, guys. I'm glad that you're engaging.
I'm seeing how might we address children of different ages. That's a great point. I mean, toddlers and teenagers are very different categories. So yeah, these are all great ideas.
Awesome. Great, thank you guys for engaging. We can go ahead and move on, and now we'll talk about brainstorming. So these how might we questions are a really great leverage point for you to jump off of as you start brainstorming, which is when you're going to try to produce mass amounts of ideas. And this is going to be a distinct segment of time that you're separating where you're going to amp up the generative part of your brain and completely just try to turn off the evaluative part. Again, we are not trying to judge your ideas right now. We're just trying to get as many out there as possible. So the intention of this, as Avidesh mentioned, is to leverage the collective thinking of your group of brainstormers. And that means that everyone should be active, everyone should be engaged, and everyone should make sure that their ideas are being heard, because all of these different perspectives that you bring to a brainstorming group are equally important because they add new perspectives to bring new ideas to the table. And brainstorming can be used throughout the design process. You can use it to plan empathy work, to assess products and services, or to come up with design solutions as we are working on today. So during that time period, you're just trying to generate as many ideas as possible. And you can spend about 15 to 30 minutes in a high engagement brainstorm mode. And you might notice that 15 to 30 minutes may not sound like a lot, but again, these sessions should be super high energy and should be super engaging. And so they will be tiring, and you probably don't want to spend more than 30 minutes in a brainstorm session at one time without a break. Again, like we mentioned before, you want to make sure that you capture every single idea, regardless of your feeling of them. And therefore, you can do different things in order to make sure they're captured. You can either assign a scribe that will write all the ideas as they come out, or you can make sure that each person has access to a shared document where you can share your ideas and then put them on the document as an individual. Cool, so in order to have a good brainstorming session, you need to have good facilitation. And so a facilitator will set the stage for an open, active, and constructive engagement with the brainstorming session. And a great way to do this could be to change your how might we question, like we talked about earlier, or it could also be to impose constraints. And adding constraints, while it may sound kind of counterintuitive, adding intentive constraints can increase your creative potential. So I've asked Avidesh to help me out with a little demonstration of this. So Avidesh, are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Okay. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds, and I'd like for you to state as many silver things as you can think of in those 10 seconds.
Okay, great. Spoons, forks, big spoons, silver bowls, tongs. Yeah, that's about as much as I got.
Okay, great. Okay, next slide. And now we're going to impose a constraint. And so now I'm going to ask Avidesh to do the same exercise, but I'm going to ask you to think of as many silver things as you can that are in your kitchen. Ready? Go.
Spoons, forks, big spoons, tongs, big forks. That was a thing. Big forks, yeah. Silver bowls. I can't even think of a silver thing outside of my kitchen.
Great. We have some people helping you out in the chat. We have knives.
Oh, knives. Yes, those are a thing. Knives. The fridge, pots, pans. I love you all so much. Toasters, colanders, whisks, trash cans. You guys are really smart.
Fantastic. And it's kind of amazing how adding this constraint of in your kitchen instead of like the whole universe has kind of helped you guys to help out Avidesh to come up with a lot of cool ideas that are harder to think of when you're just trying to think of everything. Whereas imposing this constraint can help narrow your ideas, but also they can help create more. Awesome. So, however, it is important to be conscious of when and how many constraints that you're using. And so we want to make sure that imposing a constraint is not the same thing as just rejecting ideas due to preconceived notions about the users. But here are some examples of constraints that you might be able to use to help facilitate your brainstorming activities. So one example might be a solution constraint. So what if it were made for babies? And then everyone should brainstorm only on things that relate to the problem that could be for babies. And that's kind of imposing like a point of view on it. Or you could say, what if McDonald's were trying to solve this problem? Like, how would they go about it? And then you brainstorm on that. Another way to do it could be a prototyping constraint or really a materials constraint. And it's saying, okay, well, what if I could only do this with this amount of money? Or what could I do if I could only make a solution out of cardboard? And those can be pretty generative as well. And then finally, I think this is one that we can probably all relate with, is a time constraint. If you're given a semester to do a paper, it's most likely that you are going to be extremely unproductive until the day before when you realize, oh my gosh, I have a paper that's due tomorrow, and you will have a burst of high productivity. So for example, you could challenge each other to say, everyone should come up with 10 ideas in the next 3 minutes, and use that time constraint to motivate you to come up with lots of ideas in a short period of time. Great, so now that we have all these tips around brainstorming and on how might we questions, I'm going to turn it over and do a breakout exercise where we are going to go ahead and do a brainstorming session on a how might we question that is related to the scenario that we talked about earlier. So the how might we question that I'd like you guys to focus on for the session is how might we turn an airport into a place where kids want to go? And then again, just some reminders, no ideas are bad ideas. Try to build off of other people's ideas and challenge yourself to come up with at least 20 ideas in these 10 minutes. So now we can break out.
So again, everyone take a quick stretch and get ready to transport. We do have some students that are going to share their experience. So if we could have Isabella come and share what you learned in your breakout this afternoon or this morning.
Yep. So we liked this kind of method of approaching the brainstorming because at first during the backpack idea, we weren't thinking, or we thought that the ideas possibly wouldn't work. Like we were going into it like, oh, this might not work. We don't really know how it'll work. But in this one, the questions that we were asking the group, like more specifically, were able to branch out and like diverge in many different directions, even from one singular question. And then from each question, we had more questions and more ideas, which really helped come up with a lot more ideas.
Great. Thanks, Isabella. And how about Alden? Can you share what you've, some insights from your session as well, please?
Yeah. I actually felt like our group was really creative in both sessions. However, the airport one was especially fun because we started kind of re-engineering the original, like, how might we question by adding the constraints and like also re-engineering it. So it's like, all right, so like what would we do in a scenario where it's not an airport? You know, how would we entertain kids outside of that or in a completely different situation, and that could carry over. But overall, everyone was super creative and engaging. And good job to everybody. It was good job. Like, even if you weren't in my breakout room, good job.
Fantastic. I'm going to turn it over to Amelia and Avadesh to share maybe some thoughts or insights on this breakout, and take over, please.
Yeah, I think that our breakout room also did incredibly well. I think it's amazing how the how might questions and flipping things on their head with different perspectives can really result in a lot of cool ideas. But thank you guys for participating. I hope it was fun. Brainstorming should be fun. Great, and then this is your homework for the week within your team. So now that you've kind of had practice on developing these different skills on a random problem, you can go ahead and start applying it to your own problem statement. So try a Stoke activity if you're interested in that, really just to get the ball rolling for your team and to get some energy flowing. And then we'd like you to develop some how might we questions for the problem that you have identified, and then select a set of those and go ahead and brainstorm solutions to them and focus on volume and variety. So really try to produce a ton of ideas this week, and then we can narrow them down later. Don't worry about that at all. Great, thank you. And then these are the credits for this material. Thank you to Avadesh, Teresa, and Shoshana for their help.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for everyone who bared with our presentation. I love you all, especially love Breakout Room 1. You guys are the best.
Thank you, Amelia and Avadesh. It was super fun. Avadesh didn't I don't think, introduce himself as a first student. He coordinates the first global team in Trinidad and Tobago. So we're excited to have him understand, you know, what your shoes you're in today, and to be able to put that empathy towards the design of our session today. So thank you, and thank you, Amelia, as well, for your help and leadership. So I'm going to take this time to talk about the wrap up in preparation for next week. All right, so let's see. I'm going to kind of continue on to talk about the additional opportunities. So we did a lot of fun stuff in design thinking today, but I also want to highlight the first Innovation Challenge content series episode next Tuesday is on product design, form meets function. And we have some Stanford d.school design students also participating and supporting that as well. So it's clearly going to be a fun opportunity to learn. So please join in there. And also there is some dates to be announced. So check out on the website of First Inspires for designing for impact and product development opportunities to learn. Then I want to go through and recap kind of today. So congratulations, you've completed session 2, our ideation session to generate ideas creatively and making innovative solutions. So as a recap of your homework, again, go take these tools and exercises you learned today and go back with your team and do this. I think you'll find it to be obviously a lot funner with the folks you're more familiar with. And one way to get that fun started is try a Stoke activity. I love the ideas of, what was it, the sound ball, or is it yes, let's. So try that activity to break the ice and get people going with being ready to innovate and come up with creative ideas. Then we'd love for you to develop the how might we questions for your problem that you've identified. So again, it's putting a different perspective and point of view on solving a problem. And then lastly, you want to brainstorm on a set of how might we questions, not all of them, but you can identify your top few and start doing some brainstorming. And as James from Raytheon helped us to understand is, understanding of the diversity of our users, of our customers for our innovations is extremely important. So be sure to include that in all of your thinking throughout next week. So next week, session 3 is on filtering and evaluation. So again, as James identified, there's divergent thinking where we're thinking about every idea is great. And now at this point, we need to go and converge. We need to start focusing on, okay, let's start looking at the ones we're going to focus on based on, again, users, the diversity of our user, keeping the empathy in at top of mind. And so we're going to talk about different filtration processes to narrow those down next week. And we are grateful to have the partnership of PwC to help with that, as well as our friends from Tesseract Initiative. So let's see how we're doing on time. We've got a lot of time. I know I hate being in the front of you all in lunch, but we've got probably another 10 minutes or so. If there's some questions, please, you're welcome to unmute and ask them. But as well, if you like to move on to lunch, I can understand. But I do want to thank everybody for joining, and seeing you all appreciate seeing you all and sharing your insights and such. And so just want to give you a big high five and wish you a great holiday weekend of first robotics fun this weekend. So thanks, everyone. Thank you all for our leaders and our presenters, our facilitators. And again, if you have some additional questions, please stay on. Our presenters will hold on the line. Okay, so next week I am going to bring in the Cotton Eye Joe song so we can play in the background at least, and maybe we can get someone to lead us in a dance. I will have our friend Anna from the Funky Monkeys to do that next week, perhaps. Again, hope everyone enjoyed the ideation session. I think that a lot of teams, robot teams, think they know how to do it. They ideate every year on a new game challenge. And, and they missed out today, I'm going to tell you, because I think the magic is in the breakout sessions. But this will be recorded. So happy to share on everyone who missed out today. But nonetheless, again, we really appreciate everyone being here and participating.
Thanks so much. Also, Teresa, to our presenters, thank you so much to our facilitators. Again, really appreciate you all being here and helping out today.
So any big questions maybe for Raytheon? And James is on the call, as well as Fuzz, who can probably share some amazing stuff, or maybe it's top secret, they can't.
May I ask a question, please?
Please, Eric.
Thank you. So I know a lot of companies, I know Pixar has sort of their idea box, their idea room, and then Google has their sort of 20-80% thing. So at Raycon, what do they do to sort of incorporate innovation to their team culture, please? So do they do something like that, or?
Yeah, absolutely. And don't mind me holding my cat here because he wants attention. Anyway, so we have what I work for, which is the Office of Innovation, and that's within the Intelligence and Space group. There are other kind of equivalent groups around Raytheon as well. These are resources where we want to hear the ideas, and we go through these different exercises and tools. And we have things like R&D funding that we apply towards the idea. So it's really not the same as 80-20 time. We have constraints with government contract where we can't quite do that. But we are able to fund people's ideas and do research. And on top of that too, with our group with RINS, we actually have these spaces called innovation centers that are like these maker spaces, basically. They're really cool lab spaces. They have all sorts of neat resources in them. We use them to explore things like 3D printing, robotics, virtual and augmented reality, machine learning, all kinds of really cool stuff. And they're just kind of like rooms for people to go in on their own time and just tinker, learn, and explore. And then there's people like me, innovation advocates, where we try to help connect all the dots as much as we can. Great question.
And I want to throw it out there. I really appreciate James's role within our organization and the innovation organization, because they throw out these challenges very similar to our innovation challenges here, with some specific asks, like here are some needs that we hear from our customers or we hear from people that are looking to solve. And sometimes you even have wildcards out there. It's like just throw out any idea, and it's great for people to kind of whatever they think about, they can throw out there, and then James and his team will evaluate them and find funding for them if possible.
Avidesh, I alluded to First Global. Can you share a couple, your experience, your background on that I think might be interesting? I'm interested in hearing. I'm sure many are.
Great, yeah, sure. So First Global, for those of you that aren't familiar, is similarly a FIRST sponsored project. It's actually considered a separate organization, technically, from the regular FIRST that hosts the FIRST Tech Lego and FIRST Robotics leagues. But in the end, it's all goes back to the same FIRST, hub. But basically, it's a competition that's centered at, instead of a more regular season like what you guys would have, it's centered at including a representative from every country. So I think at the most recent competition there was 163 teams of, I believe there are 182 countries in the world. That could be very wrong. Please don't fact check me. Yeah, but it's centered at inclusivity and trying to get representatives from as many countries as possible, which makes it a very, very exciting event. It puts a lot of focus on much less competition, much more on teamwork. So for the actual competition rounds, we're placed into groups of 3 so that each round we work with 2 other countries. I know this might be a bit similar to the format for your competitions like First Tech and First Robotics, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, it all goes back to the same usual first core values of competition and teamwork, and it's a really great experience. It really incorporates everyone sharing their culture and unique experiences, and it was easily one of the best experiences I've ever had. I got to meet a lot of people from other countries. I got to meet a lot of people from even other Caribbean islands that, I should have been more familiar with. I learned things about them, about myself, I learned so much more than I can ever describe to you guys. And ideation actually plays a pretty big role in that, because both years, because of like our regular school terms and examinations, we ended up on very heavy time constraints. So there was a lot of rapid pitching out ideas, scrapping them, coming up with new ones, mixing, building, starting over from scratch more times than anyone would ever like to do. But I mean, you guys should all know that is a part of the lovely experience with robotics.
Well said, Avidesh. I see a note in the chat. We're asking about the presentation when they will be posted. I think we're going to target to have those up by Becca. Please chime in.
Yeah, we'll definitely have them up by Monday, possibly sooner.
If you are in need for the presentations before Monday, because you are meeting with your teams, shoot me a note. I can send you PDFs pretty quickly.
And all the replays of all the videos and the slides are on the same page that you signed up with on the product development and design thinking site page.
Yes, and I think you all have some real fun opportunities in the breakout sessions. The facilitator notes, obviously, were just hypothetical scenarios. No need to turn those in for a grade or anything, but we do thank the facilitators for being flexible and fun during the sessions. I think I hear somebody's stomach growling. might be mine. I'm not sure, but I don't want to keep you any longer. But as always, we hope to see you next Saturday to diverge on our ideation ideas and have another fun session. So again, we appreciate seeing you all and thank everyone who's made this happen and to our gracious facilitators and presenters.
And thank you, Teresa, for pulling this all together. We appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
I had a quick question for Raytheon.
Sure.
I was just thinking, because you guys do testing for missile defense and spacesuits, and it would be expensive to like test that every single time there was a change made. Do you guys use any sort of simulation, or do you guys just figure out with experience?
So from my perspective, we do actually support a lot of looking at what's new. So exactly to your point, a lot of this stuff is just infeasible to really be able to effectively test. So we are looking at a lot of physics-based modeling and simulation and test systems, and how can we do things just as effectively, but a lot more, inexpensively or rapidly or reproducibly. And I'm going to hand it off to Fuzz to see if, from his perspective as an actual hardware engineer, what else he might have to say.
James, you covered that pretty well. And actually, it's one of the things that you brought into the innovation space that you let me experience was the virtual reality, augmented reality capabilities that we have in there. A lot of, you're going to hear this keyword a lot, digital thread. This is like the new big thing where it's, can you create a digital twin, a digital representation of your model, your product, such that you can do all of the testing virtually. You don't have to run things over and over again. You don't have to destructively test them as often as you might need. And if you can do that, you are saving time, cost, money. Raytheon Intelligence and Space, where James and I work, a big portion of our business is space. And as you can imagine, we can't really test things up in space. We need to build it and we need to be sure it's working before it goes up there, because there's one way to come back down, but you don't want to do it that way. So it's very important for us to build models, to build simulations, and to build test chambers so that we could simulate that environment before we send things out there. And that is the wave of the future. It not only makes sense from a cost-saving perspective as a company, it's now being mandated by our government to say that we can't be doing things the same way anymore. We need you guys to create a model so we can interrogate it, we can understand what it is, and that you guys can test it more effectively, and we'll be more confident with the end result.
To echo what Fuzz said, it's exactly that. It's you only get one shot when you're dealing with space stuff. You get one shot for that payload or that satellite to unfold and such. And so once it's up there, it's not like, depending on where it is in space, you might be able to service it, but chances are you won't be able to.
You don't have 20 minutes between a match to fix your robot.
Exactly.
All right. Any other questions?
Just as a follow-up, I know that at least in our team, or my team 3341 option 16, we've been trying to use Autodesk synthesis to be used as a simulator. But one of the problems that we had is that it doesn't simulate like friction and general wear and tear of the motors themselves. Do you guys have any advice as to how to tackle that?
So I think this is kind of an issue with a lot of things. Your simulation, your model is only as good as what you could estimate, right? And so it's very hard, both computationally and programming wise, to develop a model that incorporates everything in there. And so you need to make assumptions outside of the model. You need to understand the constraints of the model and say, okay, this is what it's simulating. This is what it's going to tell me. But I know on top of this, there's XYZ variables that I'm not able to model. and maybe it might take too long to model. It might be too expensive. I don't have the computational power. I don't have the expertise to even understand how to program that model. And so you need to then apply things outside of the model to augment it. So yeah, there's no easy solution to that until, you know, they invent the holodeck or something like that. But even then, right, they run it like 1,000 times and they're like, oh, 3% of the time it failed. And so they're also making guesses.
All right. Well, again, I'm going to assume there's no other questions, but you know, we graciously appreciate our friends at Raytheon to join us, not just as presenters, James and Fazul, but also we had a number of Raytheon facilitators, which we're grateful for. And again, our friends at Stanford as well. We very appreciate working with you on the design thinking process. And I want to say, I feel like this is supposed to be a learning for students, but for me and as adults, I think it's professional development. So thank you all as well. So hope you have a great holiday weekend, and looks like a nice one in California. Unfortunately, we're supposed to stay home.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you. Thank
High
you.
fives. Virtual
Thanks
high
for
five.
organizing this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
High five.